All right, everybody. Welcome to World 1-1 spoiler cast for The Last of Us 2. Now, this is your warning and everybody's warning. It's called a spoiler cast for a reason. We are going to be spoiling The Last of Us and probably The Last of Us 2 for you because that's part two, because that's what we're talking about. So if you don't want to be spoiled or you just don't care, if you don't care, keep listening. But if you don't want to be spoiled, just don't listen.
If you
And
if you don't care, you should probably care.
yeah,
Like just wait
yeah.
on it.
Yeah, if
Beat
you
the
plan
game
on
first.
playing the game at all, I would suggest turning this off and play the game, come back because we'd love to hear your opinions. We want to hear you. We're on social at World1_1 podcast on Twitter and on Facebook. So we want to hear what you guys have to say, and we would love to, even if we have to do like a part two kind of thing, then we might want to bring in some opinions. I'd love that. So we can do that in the future. And we're also on YouTube, which you can find this awesome video on, and on our home on podbean.world11 podcast. So, okay, so we're just going to jump right into it here. So, what do you think, okay, so I want to get this out of the way. Do you guys think that you need to play part 1 before going into part 2?
Absolutely.
Because it's called, my whole thing on this is it's called part 2. So
Yeah.
it's not called The Last of Us 2, it's The Last of Us Part 2. So it's a direct continuation of that story, right?
Well, yeah, and I think like the impact that 2 has is meaningless if you haven't played 1.
Right. So let's just get this out of the way too. With me tonight, I got Dylan and his brother. I'm sorry, what was your name?
Vernon.
Okay,
No
Vernon.
worries.
I'll edit that part out. I just wanted to know. Okay,
That's on
so,
me. I didn't even introduce you.
No,
yet.
that was
I'm
my
just
fault
like-
too. I'm excited to get in.
The worst
excited to
etiquette
get
of
into this
guy,
too,
right?
so
He one somebody on the podcast last second, doesn't even introduce ourselves.
Oh, dude.
It's okay. To me, we're all gamers. As long as you play the game, this is a great conversation to start. So, all right, we'll get back to it. So we were talking about, do you need to have played part 1? And Dylan was going on about it, and Vernon was as well. So, what are your thoughts?
Like I
Some-
said,
Go ahead, Dylan.
go ahead. Yeah, I was saying that I think if you don't play 1, like a lot of the story beats, especially early game of Last of Us Part 2, don't have any real impact. Like if you don't know the characters, then it kind of falls empty, I would think. I mean, I played both of them, so I don't know, but it would, to me, seem like it'd be less impactful. It would have to be less impactful if you haven't played 1.
What do you think, Vernon?
Completely agree. And to kind of let's just get this out of the way since this is a spoiler cast, right?
Right.
Joel's death, not nearly as impactful. And this is why I'm glad that you invited me to the podcast, because I'm only hearing so much divisive discourse and hate around Last of Us. This is why I was so interested in coming on. And a lot of that centers around Joel's death, but also kind of the softer moments like Ellie's birthday just would not have the impact that it does without 1. And that's such a good example of the highs and lows of this game.
Yeah. So let's talk about, before we start getting into specific story beats like Joel's death, which happens about 2 hours into the game, which it's kind of crazy because you're with this character, and I think that people were unprepared for it, and I was. It was a gut punch. I wasn't spoiled in the game before I played. So, but anyway, what do you think of the narrative and the order that they told the narrative? Do you think that the order was okay? Because I'm hearing a lot of conversation around, if they would have reordered this a little bit, it might have made a better sense to the.
I think they could have. I definitely think the game for me has a lot of like fat on it. Like you retread a lot of the same ground, and
it's
I understand.
Real game. Like it has a lot of gaming moments to it, which is good.
Absolutely.
But I also think that the total length of the game might be about 5 to 6 hours too long. They could have condensed some of the, because like for me, the Seraphites, the scars, we call them.
Right.
That was a total missed opportunity. They could have really got into them.
Yes.
And they didn't get into them as more. I was waiting for that. I was personally waiting for them, because that idea of religion really hits like a good note with me. Like I'm interested in that like post-apocalyptic kind of like religious type thing,
Yeah, I feel like they could have spent less time retreading the same ground with Abby as they did with Ellie. I understand why they did in certain aspects, like the fight with oh man, I'm blanking on his name. Joel's brother, Tommy. The Tommy fight, awesome, but you weren't retreading the same ground there, right? Like, the aquarium made sense, like going through that. But like, there's also like characters of Abby's, like the kid that was in the body bag. Like, I didn't know anything about that dude, and I didn't care about that character. Like, I think they were trying to get you to care about it.
Yeah.
But it just kind of fell dead for me. Like,
what do you think of it? No, go ahead, Dylan. I'm sorry. Finish your.
I just feel like there was a lot of like excess in the game that didn't necessarily have to be there. I'm not taking away from the choices they made.
Right. I agree with that.
End, yeah, I think the game's a great game, but it definitely could have been shorter, or they could have used that time to, like you said, delve deeper into other things like the Seraphites, which was a cool ass enemy.
Mm-hmm. What do you think, Vernon? Like the overall narrative.
So the order of the narrative, I actually think if it hadn't got spoiled, that's kind of why they did it. Is switching protagonists is just such a shock, and I think if you would have mixed it in earlier, it wouldn't have had that impact. So that part wasn't spoiled for me, and Joel's death wasn't spoiled for me. But there was kind of enough discourse around that I knew something
was happening
like that. Yes.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I should preface
super impactful.
All my opinions with I did have the game spoiled for me, except for the ending, which was awesome. Because
we'll get to that. Let's kind of hold off on giving people a reason.
Well, I'm saying it was like awesome that I didn't.
You didn't expect it.
Well, I went in knowing how the game ended because what I had spoiled, it told me like how it ended, but it didn't end the way that it told me that it ended. Right, and that like, I was just like,
oh, he kept telling me that too, and I was like,
that's great.
Yeah, you're gonna run into that. Yep.
I honestly think even if I would have had the game spoiled, the experience of playing I still wanted. So I mean, I would have still played the game. I would still enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. Like, the overall narrative for me was good. I mean, I don't take anything away from what they decided to do. That's totally fine. It's their characters, their game world. They can do anything they want. I do, like I said, I think the Seraphites were kind of a missed opportunity a little bit. They could have delved into that a little more. For me personally, the way that they tried to get you to care about Abby after seeing what she ultimately did to Joel, because the big spoiler is Abby actually kills Joel because of what Joel did in the first game. And I mean, everybody knows that Joel's not a good guy. He's done some.
As well say, I don't know that everybody knows that.
Yeah, because of The Last of Us Part 1, when he saves Ellie, I think a lot of people are like, well, he just saved her because it was like his daughter. But you have to look at how he did it. How many people did he kill? And he basically doomed all of humanity.
Yeah, he doomed humanity.
He doomed humanity, so he's not the good
He's
guy.
Like the villain.
He's an anti-hero, really. I mean, in a way, he's like the best version of somebody you love to hate, but you hate, people. Yes. But there's a lot of Joel fans out there, and a lot of people were, I think, really, really took it personally that they pretty much offed him in 2 hours. And then some of the flashback sequences were kind of, they felt, I loved them. I especially loved the one where they were in the museum and they went to the museum.
Best part.
Yeah. I actually teared up in that part a little bit because you kind of saying what actually happens to them, and then you see that relationship, that father-daughter type relationship again, which is really good. It's kind of was like at a good part of the game when they went back to that. So I was like, okay, that's good. But anyway, so Abby kills Joel and brutal. I mean, probably the most brutal death I've ever seen in a video game. And I mean, his brain matters on the golf club.
Yeah.
I mean, it's absolutely brutal. And they blow his leg off to begin with, pretty much. And I'll just preference this was Abby's father was the doctor that Joel killed.
Right.
So that's where her revenge comes in. And then Ellie comes down. Obviously, you're playing as Ellie at this point. You come down and see this whole thing happen. And she says, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to find you, whatever. And they just basically knock her out. And then you wake up, and it's like it's later. You don't see anything, but it's later, and Joel is dead. And you do this part where you go through his house and everything, and it's actually really sad. And really, I think really well done. So then, obviously, we're on a revenge story, right? I mean, simple.
Yeah.
I mean, you think it's simple. It's a story of revenge and, love and hate and loss, really. I mean, it's The Last of Us. It's supposed to be, this funny, go-lucky
The way they tackle grief and, like, revenge in that game is some of the best. Yeah, some of the best writing, in my opinion, in a video game. Like,
yeah.
Last of Us, say what you want about, people have their feelings about the story, and, they can be upset about, like, the way the story went and whatever, but if you combine both of those games, like, it really makes a strong case on why video games are art. Like, that, I can't think of a better case of a game to, like if you could only submit, one game to, like, be like, this is why video games should be considered art, or, like, a medium of art. I think Last of Us as a whole, 1 and 2, is, like, the submission to go with.
It's a compilation. Yeah. And it really is one product, I think. Like, if you put it together, it is one story, obviously.
Right.
So what do you think, Vernon, like, on the story beats of Abby and all that kind of stuff, like getting up to Joel's death, up to that point, Joel helps Abby out and then Abby ends up killing him. I mean,
so I got a couple spicy takes. So first off, I think Joel is the villain, but I actually think so I replayed Last of Us 1 right up to 2.
So did I.
And so at the very end, it's like, okay, he gets there and he does doom humanity, but in a way I'm like, well, you get there, you brought this girl all the way across the country, right? They don't tell you, they knock Ellie out, and then they're not giving Joel anything, and it's a very much like, we're instantly going to do this.
Right.
And I kind of feel like you can't be 100% sure that vaccine is going to work. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
right.
If I go get my knee replaced, I'm getting a second opinion, right? So I kind of think that he is a villain, but he's more of a villain. Like, during that journey, he says things like, well, Ellie says, hey, have you killed innocent people? Like, when they get ambushed, and he doesn't answer, meaning like, yeah. So he's definitely not a good guy. But back to this,
it's more of a survivor story. It's like, what did you have to do to actually survive in this world? Like, I would think everyone that's left, there's not any really, like, there's very few, if any, good people.
Good people,
like,
yeah.
That's a great point. And I've heard people kind of say, like, oh, well, Ellie wouldn't act this way. That seems to be some of the things. And what you bring up is like, yeah, it's not Ellie at the office 9 to 5. It's Ellie in this world.
The survival, the survival is everything world, where your next day you could be dead, or if trusting the wrong person could kill you.
So here's my other hot take. So I love Joel. I love Ellie. I really liked Abby by the end.
Okay.
And I actually enjoyed her segments and story probably more than I did with Ellie. I think Ellie is a great character when she plays off of Joel. I think that dynamic is what works stronger than just Ellie, personally.
So you thought the switch, so let's get to that point of the game. So about halfway through the game, little over half, I would say about 10 hours, you play as Abby, solely just Abby. Mm-hmm. And they kind of foreshadow it at the very beginning, because you do switch for a chapter.
Yes.
And you get kind of the handle of this. Abby is just a beast. I mean, she can take a guy and twist him into nothing,
Yeah.
And she's a soldier, and she's been training for this. I mean, this is what she does. So you have different weapons, you have different abilities, you have a whole other skill tree to level up and everything with her. So you thought, I just want to get, like, what did you think of the actual, when you switched it? You thought it was a great part to switch at?
So yeah, and like you said, once I realized, oh, I have a whole different skill tree. Oh, I have all these different weapons. And yeah, I was blown away. I was like completely shocked, like almost Metal Gear Solid 2 style.
Yeah, it was that kind of twist in there. Yeah.
Yes. I thought because of that, it was excellent. I can see where you're saying, hey, like maybe narratively it would have fit more if you would have broken it up in the same day, but it would not have had the same impact, I believe. And like you said, that foreshadowing was great.
So the one thing I thought narratively would be interesting is if they would have started off you playing as Abby, and you played maybe 2 days and like the first 2 days, then went to play as Ellie all the way up to the point to where you switched, the original switch to Abby. So you would play like day 1, 2, and 3 in Seattle, and then skip back to day 3 again to just play that end part. It probably wouldn't have had as good an impact because you were building up to the point again.
Well, and I have a question. Would you control Abby killing Joel? Because I don't think it would have worked.
No,
I don't think I could have ever liked her if I could.
No, I don't think so either. But I also think that having her kill Joel so early and that you have not really played as her much, it stops that like you caring about her. It makes it really difficult to start caring about her.
Yes.
If they would have tried to get you to care about her before you saw that part, then you could have like started seeing some of the flashbacks she was having, like with her dad and all that. It might have been more interesting, narrative wise, more linear, I should say, really. But I mean, I'm all for the non-linear version, the way they did it. I'm for that. I'm like, okay, I gave it a shot. I was when they switched the hard switch, I was kind of disappointed because I thought the game came to a really good point, and I was like, now we got to switch. And now I got to play how long? And then when it said Seattle day 1, I'm like, are you freaking serious? I'm going to have to play all these over again from this point of view. I was a little angry about it, but I got into it real quick. I was like, well, if the game wants me to do, I'm going to do this,
Yeah, I had it spoiled for me. I knew the switch was coming. I knew that was going to happen. What I didn't know is that I was going to have to like play it like from a different I knew I was going to play as Abby. I didn't know I was going to play as Abby day 1, day 2, day 3. I was just like kind of like you were like, son of a bitch. Like now for me, even worse, I had it spoiled, and then like I had to replay the first 7 hours
because you had to redo it again because you could switch consoles, right?
Right. So I had to get all the way back through the first 7 hours, and at that point I'm just like skipping cutscenes, like passing entire.
The great part about this game, you can skip any cutscene even if you haven't seen it.
Yeah,
you can just hit a button and it'll ask you if you want to skip it. So if you're not in the story, you don't give a crap. You don't have to watch any of it.
I think you're doing yourself a huge disservice.
I do too.
Yeah, but yeah, so like I'm blowing through it, and then I finally get to the point of the theater where like the standoff happens, and I'm just like, oh, all right, like here we go, like shit's about to go down.
Yeah,
boom, day 1. I'm like, motherfucker, here we go. Yeah, that was like really infuriating for me because I had just had to like replay the first day 1 twice. Now I got to play it again. But yeah, I think they could have done it like you said, like where you play as Abby first. I think it would have been cool to play as Abby, like not knowing that it was Ellie and them, right?
Right.
Like, so if you were going to change the structure, the way I would do it, like I would play as Abby day 1, day 2, like you said. Like you have the fight with Tommy, right? And like you don't even see Joel's death at this point, right? And then they flash back to Joel's death, and then boom, now you're at Ellie. Like that would be sick. But
I have a question for you though. Do you think, because I think this game does a great job of blurring who's a villain and who's a hero,
right?
And they very intentionally paint Abby as
the villain.
Yeah, and they did that on purpose.
Scars.
Yeah,
and the same with the Scars, and basically everybody except the final faction, the Rattlers, right? Which is they're probably just evil. They're just slavers.
Yeah, they're just evil.
Everybody,
I think they were really a storytelling element just to get you to kill more people to get on with the story. Yeah, honestly.
But outside of that, I thought they did a great job of blurring the lines of
But I think they still could have, though. Like, if you did the Abby thing, right? So, like, they have you play as Abby. They don't even, like, you don't even know that you're going to play as Joel and Ellie, right? Promotions change, whatever, everything, right? It's just Last of Us 2, and you start off as Abby, right? And then you're playing through day 1, day 2, and then boom, flashback, you're Ellie, like, so you already love this Abby character, right? You grow to love the character, and then boom, now you see her kill Joel. You're Ellie. You're like, what the fuck is going on?
So then you're going to see it from her point of view.
Yeah, I think if you reversed it, it might even be better. I don't know. Like, that's an interesting concept.
We'll never know, I guess, in a way.
Yeah.
You know, you can play the once you beat the game, you can play them out of order.
Right.
And I was wondering I was going to play around with it, but it wouldn't work because
you already know.
And it's not the same, but yeah, I get it. So before we go on with Abby's part of the story, let's just kind of finish up a little bit of Ellie's. So Ellie goes on this revenge quest, obviously, because Joel is brutally murdered. And she gets Tommy to go on. Basically, Tommy just leaves without her. And so she's like, I'm going to go, you know. And so she goes. And then they have, you know, gosh, what's her name? Her girlfriend's name?
Dina.
Dina comes with her. So, and I know that that's another aspect of this game that people were surprised that Ellie is gay, and I don't understand why. Because it was like you didn't play the DLC. You knew the whole time. I mean, if you played the DLC from the first game, you know she's gay. I mean, she's lesbian. It's no big deal, and you know they're people. They're just doing what people do. So, I don't even think that was really an issue with a lot of people. I think it was
so tame too. Even the like lesbian scenes were like PG-13 kind of fade to black.
Oh yeah,
and we'll get to the non PG-13 scene, which I think was not really. But that's not
that one was way worse.
Yeah,
it was way worse.
Yeah, it just didn't need to be there. But anyway, so Ellie and her group. Oh, it's really Dina and then JJ. Not JJ. It's not JJ. What's his name?
Jesse.
Yep. So Jesse happens to go and find them and everything, but they're hunting these people down. They find where they're at. They find the people are at. They're starting to hunt them down. So the way that they do that, I think, was excellent. I think the gameplay leading up to that point was absolutely excellent. The stealth mechanics are okay. I mean, they're great. I just, for some reason, like I can usually get 1 or 2 kills in, and then it's just like, forget it. We're not stealthing anymore, you know?
Yeah, I threw out stealth right out the window, like my second playthrough. Like after my first 7 hours and then having to start over, I was like, fuck stealth, move everything, like almost everything to easy, and just went on a like murder spree. And I have to say, that's the best way to play the game. All right.
So I have 2 things to add to that. One, the accessibility options in this game should not be overlooked. They're amazing. Right. Every game should kind of take this, like, I love the stealth personally. Dylan hates the stealth. So it's like I cranked up my health to survivor and stealth to survivor, but then I had like finding items easy. That's genius. Also, the stealth in this game is like, you could maybe argue that I could see somebody saying, hey, like certain mechanics would be better to evolve, like distractions and stuff, but the enemy AI, awesome. It was so awesome to just like have a dog chase me. I plant a landmine. It goes off. I snipe somebody, but it's not like, oh, now the entire base knows where I'm at. They kind of start haunting you, which was so good. As a stealth fan, there's nothing worse than like the old mission over, or everybody in the entire base knows exactly where you are. And I love that about this. Like, you can just stealth, action, back to stealth. I loved it.
The stealth was well done. One parts of it I was able to do, and not like, because I try. I always try. I'm like, what is they want me to do here? So I go for the stealth, you know. But I usually end up, it'll be like one time I'll hit something, or I'll poke out of the tall grass. The tall, medium, and short grass too is genius.
When I got the flamethrower, it was a wrap. Yeah. I was just walking around, just lighting people on fire like I was out of the Terminator or something. Like,
and that's another thing about this game. Like, really, the infected are a very minor part of the game. They're awesome, but they're a minor part of it for the battles. You're mainly fighting other people, other factions of people.
I will say though, that hospital battle, not to derail this, that is one of the best. I also like,
the Rat King
Dead Space,
battle,
Resident Evil, the Rat King, up there with the top 5 horror games ever.
Yeah, we'll get there. We'll get there. I just wanted to finish this part up so we can do the switch. So what I was thinking was when you're hunting Nora down in the aquarium, and that
was great.
Where Ellie grabs her and goes, and the only place to go is the basement, and they don't have gas masks on, and Ellie just jumps down there with her.
Yeah.
And because she's immune, and so. And how Nora's like coughing, and after you kill a couple of guys that come after you, and then she's like, "Oh, you're her," you know, and it's that gray area there where, like, she says, "I'm not going to rat out my friends," and then it just goes to black, and she says, "Well, she told me what I needed to know."
Well, that part too, like, as far as storytelling is concerned, like, that is the part where Ellie has made the switch. Like, beat that.
It's full revenge at that point.
Like, she's lost. Like, she comes back and her hand's trembling. She has passed the point of, like, no return, or so you think. Like, she has flipped that switch where she is on, like, the survival level, the revenge level that Joel was in the first one, right? Like, making people talk.
It's the pure adrenaline. It's the pure rage moment of that, where that's all she has in her mind is that revenge.
I mean, it's the point of no return, though. Like, she's
turned a corner for sure.
Yeah.
And
she's no longer little innocent Ellie. She's a fucking make her talk torturer,
Yeah. What did you think of that whole part there, Vernon? Like, did you agree with that? That's like the point of no return for her, kind of?
I do, and we talked about this after Dylan did it, and I was like, this is the point where, you can... I think that the game definitely has points of criticism that are fair, but this is the point where I'm like, I just don't agree. You watch that scene and how it unfolds and how you have to take some play your agency, and I just don't understand how you can say, hey, this is a failure of storytelling.
No, it's
because
not.
It's not expertly crafted.
Yeah, the cinematography of that scene, amazing.
And you know what? I think we're spoiled with this game too, in a way. I want to touch on this, is these voice actors and the writing are so good that you may not agree with the story, but it doesn't mean the story's bad.
Right. You can even be outraged with the story, but that doesn't
that's how
mean
good it is that you're feeling
exactly.
Anything.
Right. Exactly. I mean, how many games get you to think about this like this after, and we're still, I beat it almost a week ago, and I'm still thinking of this. So, and I'm still kind of consuming content on it, which is interesting, and I like to talk to people that have played it, because for me, I don't have anybody else to talk to about it. So I'm like, I need to talk to somebody, because I'm like, what the hell happened here? Okay. So let's put Ellie's part of the story. Let's go back to Abby again. Now we make that switch to Abby, and we're playing as Abby. And we start off right basically at the beginning of the game. It's right after the whole, isn't it right after we start off before, because like with Ellie, you go through some parts, you kill some people, you actually see these people again. Right. Like the chick that was playing the Vita or whatever.
Yeah.
That you strangle, which I thought...
Miami.
You don't strangle, you stab her in the fucking neck.
Well, yeah. I think that's
blood spurts and she gurgles. Like, it is
weird. It's kind of a weird part that, like, she's playing a Vita, but I'm like, okay, whatever. I deal with it.
Hey, man, they got to get those sales, all right? They got to push that.
Shameless product.
You know what I don't understand, though? The thing that bothered me about that scene that, like, is stupid, but like I felt like it was out of character for Ellie not to pick up that Vita.
Right.
Like, she's such a nerd.
She's interested in that shit.
Yeah, I'm like, why wouldn't she pocket that? Be like,
pick it up, put it in her bag.
Yeah, like I know she's got other shit going on, but like
I was gonna say, this is revenge, Ellie.
Yeah, dude.
This isn't Halloween at the mall, Ellie.
I mean, dude, it's right there. Like, I'm just saying, like, I'm gonna grab it. Okay.
I probably would have too. So. That I thought it would have been interesting just to pick it up and then just put it away, and she throws it in her backpack. You never see it again.
Right. Yeah. I'm just like.
But Vernon's got a good point that she's not concentrating on that right now. Like, this is, she's fully engaged in the story, the idea of killing Abby, because Abby killed Joel. Yeah, basically everyone that had anything to do with it, which is like she wants to kill everybody. but like she really wants Abby. So we get into that part of the story of Abby and going through Abby's story, and they're doing their best to get us to like her, which at first is really difficult because you just saw her brutally murder Joel.
Absolutely.
And then they do some
bitch, fuck these people.
Yeah.
All right.
Exactly. Everything, just screw it all, you know?
Yeah.
But they do some really good things here. And I wanted to touch on this that I haven't heard many people talk about are the flashbacks of Abby's flashbacks, especially at the very beginning. She only goes a few years, but you see her as a younger, like a child, basically, with her dad. And you start seeing that Ellie Joel dynamic with Abby and her dad, that same thing going on.
Teaching her how to track, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
I mean, what did you guys think of that whole idea of those flashbacks put in there?
I liked it. I mean, I at first I didn't care about it. I was like, dude, fuck this chick's dad, fuck her, fuck the zebra. I don't give a shit. Like, I know what you're trying to do, and I don't care about her. But like as the game progresses with her, like, and you meet like her compatriots and her like weird, dynamic with
Owen,
yeah, and
Mel, basically, and
yeah,
Mel,
like this weird like
a woman that she's a doctor, but she's impregnated by Owen, and because Abby and Owen aren't going out anymore, it's really weird.
It's just this weird love triangle thing, but like that's a human thing. Like
people
that happens all the fucking time. You know, and
why
like
would it be any different? Yeah.
Right. And you amplify it by the fact that like, oh, they're surviving in a post-apocalyptic world, and Owen doesn't want to be with her because she's turned into this revenge-driven psychopath like that hulked out. Yeah, dude, I love Abby as a character. Like at first, fucking couldn't stand her. But especially like, and I know we'll get there, but at the end of the game, like, just perfect.
So what did you think, Vernon? Like just at the very beginning part when you first switched and all those flashbacks and everything, what did you think of that storytelling element?
I like I said, I thought that the impact where it happened was really good. And I think if you start playing a switching this with that, I don't know if it would have the same impact. But
sure.
I also wasn't spoiled. I do kind of want to touch up why he, you said, hey, it's kind of funny how like Abby and her dad parallel Joel and Ellie.
Go ahead.
And I also thought that it was funny because by the end of the game, not going too far, I thought that Abby mirrored Joel in a weird way, especially as she,
and Ellie mirrored Joel too at the end. At the end of the first game a little bit, and we'll get there. But I like that's a little foreshadowing element, I think,
for sure,
that you saw. And
so I loved it, and I loved her kind of like Dylan said, she was hulking out, and I really actually liked that physical aspect when you jump back and you see that she's not hulked out, and then you can see, well, hey, she just did everything. There's nothing else in her life that matters, and this is her sole focus, and it's physically represented on her that she is just so focused with revenge that all her relationships and everything else in her life just fall to the wayside. And then again, without going too far, to kind of how they reverse that, how they flip that, I thought it was excellent.
Right. So let's just move forward a little bit with that, because obviously we know what happens. Ellie's dad dies, and you see that part of in the game as well in a flashback form, where she finds her dad's dead body, and you see the rage, and so then you can start seeing the change in Abby,
and that shows too, like back when you're playing as Ellie when she's trying to kill Nora. Yeah, she's like, you don't. Or she talks about her screams, like Abby's screams. She's like, fuck that bitch, talking about Joel, like he deserves to die.
Yeah
like because of the effect that he had on Abby, like, and then you see it firsthand as Abby, like through that like dream sequence thing. Like I don't, again, like Vern said earlier, I don't see how you play this game and look at it as a failure of storytelling, because it is excellent storytelling. You might not like the story,
and that's a different thing.
Yeah, it is an excellent story.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's an excellent story, an excellent way to tell the story. It's just if you don't agree with it, that's fine. But you got to kind of respect the story that they're telling. And
right.
Where's not our characters? I mean, what do you think, Vernon?
So we had this conversation kind of as Dylan was playing it, because I had beaten it and he was still playing it.
Okay.
And he's like, he thought he knew the end. And so he's like, you're not going to like the end. You're not going to like the end. You're not going to like the end. And I said, man, by the time I reached the end, I said, what I think happened, and I could be wrong, this is just my assumption, but people don't apparently associate powerful narratives unless it makes it's kind of like when people started giving death threats to Joffrey from Game of Thrones, right? It's something I never understood. It's like, you hate that character so much, and a fictional character, that means he's an amazing character, right?
That he's making you feel that way. That's part of the reason they made it that way.
Right.
Exactly.
So full disclosure too, for me, like the end that I thought happened because of the spoilers, because everything else in the spoilers was true, was that you play as Abby and you kill Ellie.
You killed Ellie. So that last part where she beats the crap out of Ellie, and then you switch back again.
Right. Like, so the part in the theater where you're beating the shit, I thought that was the end. And then when the game continued, I was like, oh, dude, like, awesome.
It almost got into, I'm not going to spoil this too much, but I almost got into Red Dead 2 territory with the epilogues. Like, I was like, this could have been spun off as DLC and I'd be totally fine with it.
Yeah, I was at first pissed because, like, I thought the, like, whole Ellie in the house with Dina thing was just, like, her brain dying and, like, all the nice...
Donnie Darko death dream.
Yeah, I was just like, this is... Like, I don't need to see this, guys. I don't give a fuck. Like, I'm sad that Ellie's dead. Please stop showing me nice things, because this isn't real, and I know it's not real. And then, like, when it continued, I was like, oh, shit, that, like, Ellie's not dead. Yeah, like, awesome. So...
Okay, so I want to just go back just a little bit, because I want to get to that point, because that's, I think, a very important storytelling point, and it's an interesting point, because I thought the story was over there, too. I want to get to the Seraphites, and why can't I remember his name? Lev, and then is it his sister or just?
It is his sister.
Yeah, his sister. Yep.
Okay, so the whole point of that, like, it totally flew over my head when the first playthrough I played. I haven't played again, but I didn't even realize that Lev was actually a female character, and it was going through she's trans.
Right.
And going through, like, wanted to be a boy, but I didn't even pick that up. I mean, did you guys pick that up?
I picked that up when they were having the conversation, Abby,
about getting married. That conversation?
No, the conversation, like, so after you, like, escape with them, like, and they're she's already lost her arm. Like, you're running from the wolves. And they have that conversation where she's like, where she's like, oh, well, she told me how she felt inside, and I hit her and, told her to, like, essentially to suck it up and blah, blah, blah. And, like, when that happened, I was kind of let down, to be honest. Not because I'm against, like, trans whatever, like, but because, like, to me, it didn't feel like it needed to be there. Like, because to me, Lev was such a cool character as this person that was bucking the norm against her religious ideology, that she just shaved her head and wanted to be a warrior. I didn't play the two together.
I get that. That's the point to me where I think is a missed opportunity in the story, where they could have really fleshed out the Seraphites better. You could have more to how conservative they were, and they had this, like, society where they would marry off people, and they set everything up. And there was like half of them are warriors, the other half do this. Some people do this because they're building a society. I mean, when you see them, they have homes and they have an island. They have all sorts of stuff. I mean, what did you think of that the Seraphite whole thing, Vernon? Like, all that?
So I'm in complete agreement. And when you guys were talking about game length, I was like, man, the game is kind of longer than what you expect. But I was just like, I could have gone hours more digging into the Seraphites, because I also thought that they were super interesting. They're definitely like this hunter-gatherer society. The sky bridges and kind of all these other elements that are built within the world, I thought was super fascinating. I really actually liked Lev as a character.
I did too.
Whereas Dylan thought it was kind of more heavy-handed, and this could have been me just not picking up maybe on that. I was like, okay, cool. I can understand he's going to get married off, or she's going to get married off, and so then she's going to, like he said, kind of buck the ideology. And I thought the relationship with the mother was interesting, although I didn't necessarily buy into his sister just got his arm cut, her arm cut off, and then he leaves to go to the island. And I thought the island was cool, but not completely explored. But long story short, I thought it was actually interesting, and I thought that the delivery of it and the reasonings, Lev's motivations, I was completely on board with, and I actually really dig Lev as a character. And I wouldn't be opposed, going way into the future, I wouldn't be opposed if it was like an Abby Lev in the future, maybe seeking out Ellie. Like, that's how much I liked Lev and Ellie. And
I think what the one thing this game did really well was it broke open the concept of what The Last of Us is. So, like, for the first game, it was Joel and Ellie's story. It was really Joel's story. It wasn't Ellie's story. It was just Joel's story. And it was his, not really acceptance of his daughter's death, but it was his journey through that and how that was cyclical for him. But then in this game, we introduced so many other characters, so many other things. You see that there's way more people left than you thought there was. And I think that they could tell stories on almost any of these groups. Like, they could have a small game like a la, like Uncharted, have a small game and just have it just about the Seraphites. If it was just like 10 hours long or whatever. And you would be totally fine with that. But I do think it was a missed opportunity. And I just don't know if there was more there to begin with. And they did cut some of it. And I'm wondering if they did.
I think there was, because the girl that they're always referring to, like the prophet, you never meet, you never really encounter. She's already dead by that time. So there's definitely a bunch of interesting.
Yeah, there's lots of lore that you can pick up and read.
They make a very good world. There's a lot of lore in the Last of Us. This part 2, and there's a lot of in the environmental storytelling too. So there's a lot there if you really want to dig in and find all these collectibles and everything. And
also the way they whistle at each other is amazing.
Yeah.
That was another thing for me for like the game mechanics when you're playing as Abby. Like, I felt like when you were fighting the Seraphites with Lev, like, as a distraction, Lev should have been able to like whistle. Like,
almost like in like BioShock Infinite, where who is that? Why can't I remember people's names tonight? Elizabeth.
Yeah.
Elizabeth can actually help you.
Right.
Lev is a great shot. I mean, he does kill people for you and stuff like that.
Right.
You have to kind of take the lead on everything.
Yeah, it would be cool for like stealth mechanics, like for him to whistle and to go from there. But yeah, I love Lev as a character. I just felt, like I said, that the trans thing just kind of felt slapped on to me. Like, not because it probably wasn't, but just because it was like, to me, I had already established that character as like a young girl that had bucked the norm and wanted to be a warrior. Like, that's, to me, what she was. Lev was a girl that was like, fuck this, I'm not gonna go fuck an old dude and have a bunch of kids.
Right.
I'm gonna go like murder people. And then they're like, oh, she's trans. Like, and I was like, okay, I guess, but like, I just didn't feel like it needed to be there. It just kind of felt slapped onto me. I didn't have a problem with it, but it just felt more than it needed to be.
I can see where I would have liked, especially if like you didn't, like, for me, like, I didn't pick up on it at all. Yeah. Until someone talked to me about it after, and I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I had no idea. And that's how good the story is, that I was like, oh, that's fine,
Yeah, I would have liked.
When I found out about that, and I started thinking back on it, I'm like, well, of course, I'm like,
yeah,
okay,
I would have liked like more narrative, I guess, with Lev.
You would have wanted like, more to flesh that whole story out.
Right. I would, because Lev doesn't really have a lot to play in her story. Like, in a lot of it, it's like her sister or other people telling you about Lev.
It does seem like a a story mechanic to push the narrative forward of you finding Abby and all that kind of stuff, and Abby moving forward. Just
so I would have liked to see Lev more fleshed out, like on why like she's trans and all that. Because to me, like I was perfectly happy with her being or him rather, being a like girl that just bucks the norm, like and was like, no, I'm gonna rebel, because that's like there's this really awesome like dialogue between him and that Abby where like she's like, oh, that's very punk rock of you, and he's like,
yes,
yeah, and he's like, punk rock, and she's like, yeah, cool, like
even though they're in this society of this post-apocalyptic, I always found this interesting as they reference watching like movies and old movies from before, so like they know some stuff that happened before,
right?
And it does give it like context to today, so you're kind of like more in it. So so I want to push ahead a little bit. So like I like talking about that part of the Seraphites as a missed opportunity because almost nobody's talking about that, and I just don't know why, but they're doing that. So
because everybody's being a little bitch about the
ending, and especially the ending. The ending is I want to get to getting up to that point of the ending, since we're trying to keep this to a reasonable time frame.
Yeah, we can go a little bit longer. It'll be all right. If you guys are cool with it,
I'm fine with whatever works out, as long as we can.
I'm having fun, so
cohesive
I'm starting to get a little
good
drunk,
conversation.
So.
I'm fine with it. I'm sure Vernon's fine with it too. He seems like he's having fun walking around. So
I had to let the dogs in.
Yeah. So what part do you want to talk about next? Do you want to talk about when Abby meets the wolves again, and the wolves start coming and start like they have this big plan to eliminate the Seraphites?
So I want to talk about, if it's cool with you guys, like what was the point where you liked Abby? Where was the point where you made the turn? Because I know exactly what the point was for me.
For me, when I made the turn to where I actually got on board with the Abby character was when she told Lev that Lev said, well, these are your people, and she's like, well, you're my people.
Okay, that's a good part.
And to that point, and that's far in.
Yeah.
But it took me that long to kind of like be like, okay, she's making an actual change in her character. Yeah. Because it's a growth point. It's not following the system just to follow it.
What about you, bro?
Man, I think I kind of went in just like strapped in kind of like for this, right? Like I'm like, hey, Last of Us is not Assassin's Creed or something like, or Fallout where I'm choosing my own path. So I was like, I'm down for whatever ride I'm taking. And I think probably the flashbacks helped kind of establish, but I really liked Owen. I really liked Manny. I kind of really like these other people.
So yeah, we can talk about those for a little bit too, if you want to get into like a little bit of Owen and Abby and the whole scene there that probably doesn't even need to be there. Sure. Because like Abby goes, there's a point there when you're playing as Abby, she goes to the aquarium before she actually meets Lev and the Seraphites and everything.
Yes, well, she's on the Ferris wheel and everything, right?
Right. Yes. And it's like, so, and Owen is just there, and it's just Owen at that point. And so Owen and Abby had this thing going on before, and then Owen describes this supposed to be like a safe haven where there's fireflies still, and it's basically in California, like Santa Barbara. He says, go to Santa Barbara. He's got a sailboat. He goes, I'm going to go there. And it's going to be, we're going to be okay. And she's like, that's not a reality. There's no place that's safe. Right. So what did you think about that whole scene, all that stuff?
Before that, my turning point for Abby was the Sky Bridge.
Oh, okay.
Yes. 100%. And her vulnerability for heights, I'm with you.
Yes, that's heights too. That was when it really, really humanized her to me.
Yes.
Like, because when I was playing as Abby, first off, like, I prefer Abby's play style way more than Ellie's play style. Like, just punching zombies in the face, like, just awesome. I love her play style. But her, like, whimpering at, like, the height, like, and then Lev just being like, come on, you got this. And like, they're talking about like, where strength comes from fear and all, like, I don't know. It just made me, like, something clicked with me where I was like, all right, I guess Abby's okay. Like,
100%.
She's a normal person. I think that was the humanizing part of her. Like, she wasn't just this machine that was hell-bent on revenge. She actually has a personality, and she has, a fear. She's afraid of heights.
Right. And I love the camera work with her, like, when you're high up, because, like, if you're high up with Ellie, it doesn't do that, like, weird, like,
vertigo kind of thing.
Vertigo thing, yeah. And they did it just right. Like, when you're with her and it goes, like, way down and then, like, comes back up a little bit, and you're just like, oh, fuck. Like, even me, who's not even afraid of heights, like, my hands were getting sweaty. I was just like, dude, yeah, fuck this. I'm not feeling this. Like, so that's the turning point for me.
No, that's a good. No, we can go from there too, because I just wanted to touch on that Owen, Abby, and Mel relationship kind of a little bit, because that weird triangle. It happens in real life all the time, but in this world where you can't really ignore anything, I think that the character there that's obviously the most out is Mel.
Yes.
Because it's sad, really, because she's like the replacement for Abby.
She's a rebound. Yeah. Like, and she has to live with knowing that she's the rebound. Like,
and she's always like asking Owen, well, is Abby coming? Or because if Abby's coming, I'm not doing it. Or so there's always that kind of like jealousy,
weird tension. Yeah.
Yeah. That
when he doesn't want to write her on the board when you shoot all the targets.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. So because he doesn't want Mel to know that they're there. They've been there, that she was there. And then you're on that boat and you get that sex scene between them, between Owen and Abby.
It was so weird. I hated it. Wasn't it awkward? I hated it, dude. It was just like they go from like fighting to like the Pound Town in like 2 seconds, dude.
And for a game, it shows
it was
a lot of
graphic. It was
a fully, waist up, totally. They were totally nude, obviously, but you see from the waist up.
Yeah.
And it was told. What did you think of that, Vernon? That whole scene? Did you think that had to be there? Or think it could have been more implied, like it was with Dina and?
So that's the funniest thing.
That's my problem with it. Like, so why didn't, if you're going? Well, that's one of my problems with it. I got a couple of problems with it, but that's if you're gonna show the like straight, like, for all these people that are saying the game's woke. Like, they show a straight sex scene, but don't show the gay sex scene. That's not very woke, okay? Like, it's they gloss over Ellie and Dina's like sex, and then like just go like almost not quite hardcore porno with.
No, it was definitely Showtime After Dark. From the
Cinemax.
90s kind of porno, kind of Where it made, like, personally, I'm a conservative person anyway. I don't like sex scenes in movies even. I just think they're just, a lot of times they don't need to be there. Nudity even. Sometimes it needs to be there for a storytelling element, but...
Not a fan of Game of Thrones.
No, I love Game of Thrones, but, if you didn't realize, after the first 2 seasons, they really did cut a lot of that out.
They did, yeah.
And because it's not, if it's just there because it's on HBO. That's what
have you read the books?
Yeah, I know. But, some of this was, I just felt that some of this was it because, we're going to placate a certain group of people, or I don't even know what it was. It just didn't seem like it had to be there. It could have been applied.
To be fair, like, I think the reason why it was there, and even though it's kind of like the only flaw or one of the only flaws in the narrative, is to show, like, because the entire time there's this built-up tension between those two, right?
Exactly.
Like, and it's just building and building and building, and then they get to the point where, like, they're so frustrated, and, like, it just comes out in a sexual, like, passion, because they do still have feelings for one another. I understand the story beat of it, like, but
right, I get it.
It just felt excessive.
It did a little bit. What do you think, Vernon?
So I actually kind of like the contrast between Ellie because it's more love, right?
Oh, right, and more like a lust
more
thing.
raw, right?
Yeah.
So I actually thought that it was fine, and like you said, it was kind of like a tension build up, and I like the difference. And I guess in an overreaching thing, it's kind of like, but I'm more of a person to be like, hey, if we're okay with shooting dudes in the face with
Oh
shotguns,
yeah,
I'm okay with some nipples, right? So
Right.
that's
Yeah.
kind of where that's kind of like where I'm more open to it. But yeah, I liked it. I thought it was fine.
That's an
Let me
interesting
put it that way.
point
Yeah.
too with the contrast, because like if you're saying like Ellie and Dino were more love, like it's more face
See,
to face.
I never really thought about that aspect
Yeah,
of it.
and
Now
it
that you
is a
put-
good contrast because
That's
like
a really interesting point you bring up, and I never really thought about that. But you're right. It's more of, especially the way that the actual scene goes down.
yeah, where they shoot it like it's doggy style, they're not even looking at each other.
Right. It's more of a mechanical thing, just get it over with kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so okay, I can
angry. It's fucking angry.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, that's the first time I actually heard that.
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't
a great
think about
point.
that
I never
either.
thought. Now when I play that again, I'm gonna think about that. It's gonna help me think about it more. And I'm like, okay, then if in that context, I think that's fine then. I still think it could have been less, but that's okay.
Yeah. What's surprising to me is that it's in a Sony game. Because Sony's very
company,
Sony's very against nudity of any sort in their games,
especially now.
Well, I was gonna say Sony at any time, because Sony out of war.
They used to be.
They used to not to care.
Yeah, but now they're.
But Sony's trying to become a family company.
I think what they're really trying to do, honestly, is they're becoming more of a North American company, and they're because like Sony, the United States section of Sony, really controls a lot of the narratives now in games and controls because the most sales are happening here. So they're trying to kind of like consolidate things, and I think
that's probably why they let it go though, because they're like, dude, Last of Us is such a fucking. You guys do whatever.
And it did what it wanted him to do. It created people talking about it.
Oh, yes. For sure. Sure.
I mean, look what we're doing now. We've talked an hour already, and it's like we just feel. I mean, I feel like we just scratched the surface of it a little bit, but we're actually about 3/4 of the way through. Of like the actual story. So, what do you want to? Do you want to touch on when Abby is after the sky? Why she's going on the sky bridge? Because Lev's sister has. Got injured in the arm, which is that one trailer you saw where they say clip her wings and she gets her arm broken.
Oof, that was rough.
It's just brutal. I mean, brutal.
One of the best gaming experiences ever. Like immediately after that, like when you get the hammer and then you just start getting surrounded by zombies,
and you gotta take them home.
Dude, that was awesome. I was just like, I'm here for this.
You take some out and you run a little more, and you take some out and you run a little more. I love that. I love that kind of feeling. It did make me feel like, you know what, I'm not going to make it. I'm not going to get this.
Like, you're just, it's pitch black. Like, they're coming out of nowhere. Like, yeah, dude, I love Last of Us. I love it. Like, so good.
What did you think about that whole part, Vernon?
Yeah, I think it goes a long way to paint the world. Right. Of like how dark it is, and then touching on mechanics, which I don't think we've really touched about.
No, we haven't.
Just going prone and the inclusion of the dodge and how flawless kind of like the animation system is in this, that it just, when I went back to play original Last of Us, it felt more like I could see the code.
Yeah, it's more of a tank game. It was, the original game is not as polished. I mean, definitely took everything from the first game and just made it better.
Just those little inclusions, and it just makes for such visceral, intense combat where I'm, my heart is actually beating a little bit.
My
which doesn't
favorite
really happen.
New mechanic is if you get shot by a rifle, right, and you fall back and hit the ground,
and you're up, on your back.
Yeah, you can still shoot. Me and this one guy traded blows, right? Blew his brains out. He shot me. I hit the ground. Two guys were coming through the door, and I mollied them off the ground and lit them on fire. And I was good. That was awesome. I was like, that's excellent gameplay right there.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing we haven't touched on, which is the gameplay, which is super polished. I mean,
and visceral.
And visceral, yeah, and they make you when you're killing somebody, or if you're strangling somebody, and you feel every death. It's like you're killing somebody. It's not just just I'm just gonna, it's some games you can just kill hundreds of people and just be fine with it, and you don't actually really feel it,
So, bro, did you ever have somebody beg for their life?
So I finally did, and it is pretty awesome, and I let them bleed out. But I do want to touch about like one of my few complaints with the game.
Okay.
Is everything so like I think that the game is a technical masterpiece. I think like you can tell it's like one of the last Sony games just because they have perfected everything. I think it's one of the best looking games.
Oh,
but
sure.
Everything looks so good, and then that choking animation is like the same choking animation until you upgrade it. And I'm just like, man, a little bit of variety to me, I think would have gone so well because it stuck out because everything is just so polished. Her face is so like the grimace, everything is just so detailed that I was just like, man, this is kind of like breaking that immersion for me because it's that same one. Now, once it's sped up, like once I got the shank, which was a little faster, it wasn't as noticeable. But that is one of my complaints is, man, if they would have just added 5 animations to cycle.
I mean, that's the one thing about The Last of Us, where you're spamming triangle all the time to pick stuff up. Yeah. You're doing the same thing over and over and over, but you're doing that to get to the next part of the story, which is what the game really is about.
I keep slicing my sword and slicing my horse in Ghost of Tsushima because I'm like pressing triangle to get fucking on the yeah, dude. Because of Last of Us, I'm like triangle. I'm like, oh shit, sorry, horse, sorry.
So I don't hate the loop, and I think every game, when you boil it down, whether it's
a game,
Borderlands, there's always that loop, right?
Even I agree.
Has that loop,
except for Death Stranding.
Well, no, there's a loop in Death Stranding because you have to manage the cargo and everything. But yeah, I don't want to stray too far.
No.
But I'm okay with the looting because I thought that the world was so detailed and you would find interesting kind of things, except the maybe, hey, there's a safe. And now I know that there's a note.
Somewhere.
Somewhere here.
Oh, I stopped doing that. I just Googled it. I was just like, what's the fucking code to this? Like,
that was the one thing different about this game. When you found a safe, it didn't, if you had found the code, it wouldn't automatically just open it for you.
Yes.
Like the first one did. You actually had to
for some
enter
interesting things like the anniversary code. I don't know if you did that.
Yeah.
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 My favorite code was the one in the apartments, like
with the
two, as Abby.
The 2 rooms, like it's our apartment number and your apartment number or whatever.
Yeah.
So it allowed for some like interesting puzzles. So I kind of like that. And the looting I liked because there were so many details and there was cool stories like that one safe room where all these people are locked in and you're like, why are all these people locked in? But if you like read all these notes, there's a whole nother story where this guy locked him in because they turned on him. And so I liked it. I liked the loop of the game.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get to one of the boss fights because I think that a lot of people they like to talk about this one, and that's the Rat King fight when you're as Abby. You're in ground 0 for the infection, so you're in the hospital where the first infected was, which I'm pretty sure is the Rat King. You're just not to that point. They haven't really. They open it up in a little bit of story, but I'm thinking that because that infected was down in that. The basement of that hospital for 25 years. Since this is the first time that anybody's been down there. So what did you think about, I'm going to give you my impressions on it. When I first played it, I kind of thought it was honestly kind of bullshit at first because I'm like, this is the hardest fight in the game. And I kept dying. It almost made me want to open up the accessibility options and lower the level. But then I'm like, okay, what am I doing? And so I finally just ignored. There's another enemy that comes out of that part. I ignored that enemy until I finished the Rat King. And it really wasn't that difficult when I got to that point. And I was like, okay, I just run around in a little circle and make sure I can't get cornered pretty much. Because that's what would happen to me. I think I would start like shooting it.
Yeah, I died like 12 times. I'd like back up against the wall and I'd be like, fuck.
I'm like, I can't go anywhere. And I should just do this loop,
Yeah.
So, I mean, what did you think of that, Vernon?
I loved it. My heart was pounding. I guess I just got lucky where I beat it the first time. I did waste like 2 or 3 shanks on that little one, and I was like, dude, this guy will not leave me alone. But I was like sprinting through, and it was one of the very few sections that my wife watched me play.
Okay.
She was like, "This game is insane. Like, what are you doing? I'm never gonna play this game because this game is the scariest thing that I've ever seen." And I'm like, "It's not really necessarily a horror game." And she's like, "Yeah, I'm watching this. This is a horror game.
This part was true horror, like out of Dead Space.
I loved it because Brooke watched me play that, and like she's like, "Oh, just get the thing. There's the ambulance right there." I was like, "Hold on, I need to like wipe my hands. I need to get ready." Like, she's like,
"Yeah, because you know it's coming."
Yeah, she's like, "Why?" And I was like, "Well, because as soon as I get in that ambulance, some big motherfucker is gonna come, and I'm gonna have to fight it." She's like, "What?" And I was like, because as gamers, like I know the mechanic. Like, oh, it's the only thing that's lit up in this entire basement. Yeah, okay. Let me just go ahead and go in there, you know? And like, of course, that's where the shit is, and then boom, yeah, the Rat King. And I at first I hated the Rat King because I was like, dude, this is so much horse shit. Like, because like you, Josh, I kept getting bagged into a corner and like I was like, can I? And then I was like, well, maybe I just have to run away. Like you know,
you just can't brute force it. It's one of those things that I almost think that it would be interesting if you could not fight that enemy and just sneak away, because if you think about it, it's the first infected or one of the first infected. One person shouldn't be able to kill that thing.
Yeah, it was just for me. I was like, I thought I needed to run away, like out of the area. I was like, oh, it can't be killed. Like
that's what I thought at first.
Yeah, I was like, oh, it's Dead Space. I can't kill this thing. I need to get the fuck out of here. And like I just kept running around and not finding anything and getting cornered and killed. I was like, all right, fuck it. I'm just gonna like molly it, shoot it, like just wasted literally all my ammo on this thing, and he finally died. And I was like, oh, yes.
I'm a big fan of the bombs. I use those pipe bombs.
Pipe bombs. Yeah.
I had like 4 or 5 of them. I just lobbed them at him, and you know, and
quick lob.
And then I pull. Yeah, I mean, those are one of those times when you're like, screw the resource management. You're just pulling out anything you got, and you're just using
flamethrower, pipe bombs, shotgun, everything.
The entire arsenal. I do want to touch on something that you brought up that is like my other complaint about the game is not necessarily in this sequence, but I thought that the stealth would have been better if you could have just snuck past encounters. And there's a few that you can, but you certainly can't.
There's only one I was successfully able to sneak past, and it was when you had Lev and you had to get the gas mask, and then there was the 2 bloaters in the bottom there, and there was like 3 clickers. I was able to kill the 3 clickers and then sneak past into the elevator shaft. And that was the only time I was able to do that. And I was like, you know what? That's awesome. I was able to do that, you know. And but you're right.
Them all.
Where like you can't sneak past some of them. You have to kill them all.
Yeah, you can't do like a non-lethal sneak past everybody. And I think that outside of a few encounters, it would have been awesome if you could have done that, personally.
Would have been cool if you could have gone through the game with only like almost like a pacifist run where you only killed a few people that you had to kill for story. But I get it. I mean, you know, and those kind of things where the one thing that this game does is it makes itself a game. So and I'm like, okay, that's cool. It's more than kind of the first one did a little bit.
See, that's funny that you say that, because I thought that the first one was very gamey after going back to it, because it did the like thing where, you know, at the very beginning it's teaching you how to shoot. And like these 3 hunters, and then it does the classic thing of like, okay, well, fuck this, and then she shoots him, and then it pauses, and it's like, okay, hey, we'll dodge down behind this like half wall convenient cover, and then enter into this classic tutorial. And I thought that there was more moments that were kind of like extremely gamified in the first one, whereas the second one, there is definitely that, but it tries to blend it more, I think, or at least kind of like hide those edges a little bit more. Too,
that's the difference in time, like from 2013 to 2020. Like now we're so much used to the game, and it was the beginning of the life cycle of end of life cycle of PS3 to the end of the life cycle of the PS4. They have so much more. So our expectations as gamers have risen so much. So I think that they're like, okay, if you're playing this game, you kind of know what the deal is, and we're gonna not hold hand to you as much, but we got all these accessibility options if you want. So
yeah,
and the way they did that was great. So I think we're to the point where we're probably going to go to the end of the game, huh? So let's talk about the end. So the wolves are coming to basically wipe out the Seraphites. They have this final plan in mind, right? Where they're gonna they go to this island and just start taking everybody out. And Abby obviously gets stuck kind of in the middle of that whole thing. And at that, at one point you do switch back to Ellie, which I want to talk about. When you switch back to Ellie, what did you guys feel at that point? Did you think that was a good use of the narrative to do that?
Fucking Tommy with his armor, unkillable. He died 3 times in the story, and I love Tommy, and I think he probably lost the most. But at that point in the game, I was just like, and this is also why I liked Abby more. Is like Abby actually spared Ellie twice, and killed
and she could have killed. Yep.
Yeah. So I thought it did more to like humanize her and kind of make. It's funny how they like she's going to be more of the hero. And Ellie was actually becoming like more and more of a villain.
Yeah,
even
because
at the end where she's holding the knife to Lev, and it was interesting.
Yeah, because at the point where you're Ellie with Dina in the house, right?
So at that point, after Ellie gets the crap beat out of her by Abby, and Abby's like, "We're not doing this,"
which was awesome.
If I see you again, you're dead, basically.
Yeah. Right. And you go back as Ellie, and like Tommy finds. Hears about Abby, and comes in there, and like the entire time I'm just like yelling at my team, don't do it, dude.
Don't do it.
Leave it. Right. Leave it, dude. Like you're happy, you've got JJ.
This is the thing with third-person omniscient. Like you and I as the gamer know, but she doesn't know yet. She doesn't know what's happening to Abby. She doesn't know, the whole story yet, right?
Well, it's not even though she doesn't know, like, dude, she spared you. Like, you guys got your asses kicked in Seattle.
Twice.
She left you alone. She let you're home with Dina. You're happy. You guys are
let Dina.
Yeah, let Dina live. You've got JJ. You're listening to music. You've got
even Dina says stuff at one point, like, you think this is easy for me, but I do it because of you.
Right. You've got the post-apocalyptic American dream. Right. All right. Just
They got a farmhouse. They got
enjoy. She's got PTSD, but like something you gotta live with.
Everybody probably has it in this world.
Yeah.
Right?
If you're alive, you've got it. Yeah.
Just accept it and move on with your life. You have a good life, Ellie. Don't fucking throw it away. Fuck Tommy.
And then Tommy comes and says, because he's all messed up. Like at that point, I didn't know Tommy was still alive. Because let's just flash back real quick. Tommy gets shot in the head. I mean, from the angle that it looks like his brains are on the ground. But in reality, it's just he got like blown. It's part of his jaws.
His eye got blown.
His eyes all messed up. Yeah, so he doesn't have one eye, and he's limping around, and he's like, I can't do this because of my injuries. And so he puts that.
Made me a promise.
He does the same thing that Ellie did to him at the beginning. Ellie did this to him at the beginning.
Well, Ellie didn't make him promise. She just said that she was going to go.
Right.
Like,
he did pull out the kind of like the bad juju card, which I would not have done, because basically Tommy's marriage is over.
Yeah.
He's lost everything. He's
lost everything. His brother, everything.
He's turned into like this bitter person because of revenge.
Yeah.
He wants Abby dead, and he's finally tracked her down, and he knows that he can't do it, so he pulls Ellie down with him. And like, dick move, first of all right, like, dick move. I get it, but dick move. He's like, oh well, I can't do it, and you promised me. And she's like,
and Ellie at first, and then I love the part where Dina goes out and just bitches him out.
Yes.
And because that was a really good part. I mean, really good. Because you're like, and then they go to bed and all that, and then Abby gets up, or not Abby, I'm sorry, Ellie gets up and just can't let it go.
Well, she has that flashback.
She starts having the flashbacks. Yeah.
Yeah, and she just can't.
Was this the flashback with the scene in the barn?
No. She so the night of
basement, right?
well, the night of, after she talks to Tommy, like, she just has the vision.
Flashback of Joel, like the blood, just Joel laying there.
Yeah, she just has the vision, and then she gets up, and she makes a good case to Dina. She's like, I can't sleep, I barely eat, like I have to finish this.
And then Dina tells her, if you leave, basically I'm done.
I'm gone. Yeah. And which brings us to the end of the game.
Right. So you do go off as Ellie, and you go to Santa Barbara, and you start hunting down Abby again. And little do you know that Abby was caught. Abby was caught by a group of, after she contacts the Fireflies from a radio, she is caught, and her and Lev are caught. And so, and then Ellie, you're basically going through this fortress to find one person. So I kind of feel that this part is a little, it's not that it's unrealistic. This whole game is obviously kind of unrealistic, but the point of it was just a narrative point, just to get you to fight some more people to get to Abby again, which I don't know if it was 100% necessary, but I liked it. I enjoyed it. It got you kind of acclimated to playing as Ellie again.
Well, it makes sense obviously too.
Yeah.
It's like, the Rattlers are like standard copy and paste post-apocalyptic bad guys.
They're the hunters.
Yeah. They're, the Left 4 Dead, the Walking Dead, like pool fights with zombies in them, kind of bad guys. Like, all right, yeah, just easy. Nobody gives a shit. Let's murder these guys. Kind of bad guys. But, you get to that part where you finally find Abby,
Yeah. And Abby's strung up because she tried to escape. And so they're like, she's strung up by the
doctor. And Ellie's wounded at this point.
Yeah, Ellie
got captured too.
The one wound that won't heal or anything is the best storytelling element in it. So they're both characters are weakened. And Lev is strung up. They're both strung up, basically. Abby and Lev are strung up to die, basically.
Right.
And
she's emaciated.
Oh, yeah. Like, Abby is a shell of her former self. I mean, basically, she got all big and bulky just to survive this whole thing, right?
Right.
So, and she's just, she's about Ellie's size at that point, honestly. And so it's more of a fair, the game fight, that you would expect is happening. But at first, Ellie is just helping them, or Abby just picks up Lev and goes, "Our boat's over here."
Yeah.
And she recognizes who she is, and then here's where we get this. We do get a flashback before this. I want to touch on. Ellie flashes back to Joel on. It was after the porch, and there's a scene I think people are not taking this scene as important as it is, because the flashback here is when Ellie says, or she says, I want, I could have done something. I could have been important. I could have saved, people. But she goes, I don't know if I can forgive you, but I'd
like to try.
Yeah. And so now you're starting to foreshadow to the point where now
she
Abby
never had that closure.
She didn't have that closure, not with Joel.
Right.
But she might be able to get it with Abby. And I think that a lot of people skip over that point. They're just like, oh, it's a sheer revenge story and that's it. But it's really about the character coming back from it too.
Yeah.
And realizing that the cycle is just going to keep going if I keep doing it.
The game, yeah, so she's getting into her boat and then she sees Joel on the ground beaten to a pulp.
Yep.
And then she's like, I can't just let you
let
walk
it go.
away.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't do it. And Abby's like, I'm not going to do this.
We're not doing this. Yeah.
We've both been through too much shit. Let's just go, man. And, Ellie's like, no, you're going to fight me. And she's like, I'm not. And then she holds the blade to Lev's throat. And then she's like, all right, let's do this. And then you get into this fucking masterclass of a brawl. Just top 10 brawls of all time.
What did you think of that final fight? That start of it, Vernon and everything? Did you think it was good?
So, dude, there's so much in this. I think like Abby's physicality is like a physical representation of how broken she is. I thought it was great that she was like shrunken and really didn't look like her. And here's the thing, it's like Ellie's the hero of the first one, and everybody loves Ellie, and this is what I think is so genius about it. And I've seen people who are like, hey, we went on a revenge and we didn't get revenge. I didn't want to kill Abby at this point. And, you know, like Dylan said, she's holding a knife to Lev's throat. Then she's actually using a knife in combat. And it just, I think this is what's brilliant about the end, is it just actually didn't feel like you would think it would feel, right? Like we have these ideas of like grandeur and like how satisfying it's going to be to get back. And it's like, it solves nothing.
It felt hollow.
Right.
And that's
the entire
the point.
Fight. Yeah, exactly. Yep. The entire fight felt hollow. I was just like, perfect. Dude, I don't want to do this. And then when she's holding her under the water.
In fact, I put the controller down a few times.
Yeah, you got
murdered. You can't do it. You know, and so I'm like, I want to get this over with.
Yeah,
I don't want to feel this way. And I believe that that's 100% the intention. And like we said before, the storytelling, the writing, the gameplay mechanics all brought you to this point. Like you were both badasses, and now you're just down to the raw emotion that you have left.
Right, and
it's like defeated, and they're defeated.
Yeah, and you get to the point where she's holding her underwater, and then you have that flashback of Joel on the porch.
Right.
You know, and she lets go, and it's this beautiful like moment of like where she realizes that it's not going to bring Joel back. Whatever she does, it's pointless.
And at that point, too, I should mention that Abby actually bites off basically 2 of her fingers.
Oh, yeah, very important, actually.
Yeah.
And then, you know, Abby and Lev leave, and then Ellie goes back to the farmhouse. Dina's gone, took everything.
Can't play guitar.
And the game. She goes to play guitar.
Yeah.
And it's like ding, ding.
She has missing 2 fingers.
Right, and that's her connection to Joel.
Yes.
So
she lost that connection now.
Right. Yeah. She has lost at this point everything.
A piece of her.
Yeah. And
that's what the guitar represents, is like her. I think the guitar really, like when she puts it in the windowsill, that's basically her leaving Joel behind too.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
And she's like an artist, right? Like you can see the paintings and the music, and there's.
I don't know if you've like ever read her journal. Like you can read her journal throughout the game.
Yeah.
Right. And she's got all these sketches and poetry, and like it's. And at the end of the game, right, there's no more entries in the journal. Like she puts the guitar up, like, and she walks away from the house that her and Dina had. She lost everything, but she gained her humanity.
Yes. I was hoping you were going to say that. Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's the takeaway here, right? I mean, that's what I thought too. It's like she finally understands what's important.
Yeah.
And it wasn't the revenge. It was coming back from what we thought was where she couldn't come back from.
Right. Yeah. It's a beautiful ending. It's sad. It hurts, but that's the point. Like she can't play guitar anymore. She leaves the guitar. That's her only connection to Joel. She lost Jesse. She lost Dina. She lost JJ. You know, she lost Joel. Like
she lost everybody. I mean,
she lost everything. But in the end, after losing all that, she gains her humanity back and like comes out a different person and a better person because she didn't kill Abby. You know, she didn't kill Lev. You know, and in the game
she didn't go full Vader.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. I mean, is that what you pull from it too, Vernon? I mean, I know that you said you're happy that that's what Dylan said, but
yeah, and I think so. And it's like, look, for all I do have some problems. Like I think we said that some things were used just to drive the narrative. You know, kind of like how Isaac dies immediately, and then you're kind of like,
oh yeah, he could have been a badass character. Yeah, you know,
missed opportunity with the Seraphites. Some things are plot devices, and then it's like the game takes 30 hours, but we're gonna, you know, like run through this in 5 minutes. But for all my problems that I have with the game, like the overarching narrative is not one of them. How it ends is not one of them. Like I think Joel's death was actually the only way that this game worked, because if Dina dies, it just doesn't have the same impact. And I actually think that the risk here, which isn't usually a risk, is taking a beloved character, whether he's a hero or an anti-hero. It doesn't work with anybody else. And I loved it, man. I thought that the very end where she tries to play guitars and put everything, I kind of took it like maybe she's going to try to start anew, and I'm not sure that she won't go back to Jackson.
Right.
Or that she won't wander out, but I kind of like that it's like open. Like she's put those things to bed, right? She's put her
and it puts such an emphasis on that game throughout the entire game.
The
like
guitar.
You can play guitar, throughout
probably
so
the
many
best
different parts.
The best use of the touchpad ever.
Oh, for sure.
People are playing like Hurt covers.
I saw that. Sure.
Yeah.
You can play anything.
You're right. You can play anything on it, and I think that even more drives home that like she can't play it anymore. She doesn't have that ability because she lost her fingers. She lost her connection to Joel. But in the end, like I said, she gains her humanity, and I think that is like more than anything, like
she broke the cycle of violence.
It's a masterclass in storytelling, dude. It's like you can't get better narrative driven than that. I don't see. I'll talk to you about any game you want as far as narrative goes, and I think Last of Us is probably the best narrative combined, 1 and 2 together, like just amazing, and it makes you feel something. There's not a lot of games that make you feel, and I teared up in that game several times. Like I felt relief, anger, like there was the whole fucking range of emotions in that game is in there.
And at the end, then for me, especially at the end, I felt satisfied with the ending. Like if that was where they were going to end the whole thing and not do another Last of Us game, I was fine with that.
I think they are though, because
I do believe they are.
Like, did you check out the new, like after you beat the game, like the new home screen? Like they make it to, they make it to the Firefly.
Yeah. So I mean, it's going to be. I mean, I think that they will make a sequel to it. I don't know if it's going to happen anytime soon. I don't know.
Well, especially with all the fucking backlash, dude. I wouldn't make another. I'd be like, fuck you guys. You don't deserve.
Well, but when you think about it, like I want to touch on that too, because I mean, okay, so we went through the whole game, but like 5 minutes or so or whatever, I want to touch on that. What do you think the backlash did to this game? Do you think, like for me personally, it would have been interesting to see the world where the leaks didn't happen?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And would there have been as big a backlash? I also think the backlash is going to really calm down, and it's a vocal minority that are really angry about it. And I think over time, it's actually this game is going to age better.
Well, yeah, I believe so. I think the backlash is unwarranted. Like a lot of the backlash is stupid. Like
I know
they claim that the game's like, woke, get woke, go broke. They claim that the ending's bullshit.
Oh yeah, because you didn't kill Abby, and that was one of the things I told somebody. Because somebody said, "Well, I didn't get to kill that bitch finally," and I'm like, "But you didn't have to. That's the point."
Yeah.
It's not. He's like, "But I really want it." I go, "Is that how you are as a person? That you would, come on." I mean, what do you think, Vernon? This whole backlash that's happening and.
So it's very interesting. I think it boils down to, I can see if you watch a 2-minute video of your favorite video game and it condenses and truncates all the spoilers and main plots and you don't experience it. Because like I said, once you go through that whole journey and then you have that fight with Abby and you see she's shrunken, at that point you're like, we've just been through too much. But if you watch an 80-second spoiler
you haven't
video,
gone through it. Yeah.
Exactly. So I don't think that the outlash would have been as bad. And, we actually had a friend.
I was just about to say, yeah.
And who has
refuses to play it.
A stronger opinion of the game than I do.
Yet
they haven't played it. So I think that time will help it only because more people will play the game. But I can see where you'd want to get revenge, and I think that could have been an interesting tale, but I liked the way that it wrapped up, and I liked that it didn't give you a choice, and I think that's one of the big problems that people had. Like, I was strapped in. I'm like, hey, Last of Us is not a pick your own adventure.
Not your story. It's their story. They're telling it the way they want to tell it.
And you should have got that from the first one. That's what confuses me.
Yeah, because you didn't get to walk away from saving Ellie. Like, if you wanted to.
Here's the thing I think that happened, and we've talked about this, is that people were okay with that decision. And so they weren't angry about it. And, but people weren't really okay with the decisions and some of the decisions in here, so they think they have a right to be like, we need to change this. I'm like, no, you need to live with it. It's like, it's not your story to tell. It doesn't mean that, you have to like it, but it doesn't make it a bad story or a bad narrative.
Like I said, I think I have some problems with some plot devices and everything else. Yeah. But when you look at like the museum and some of the person-to-person conversations, it's expertly written. Like Dylan said, I don't really feel that much emotion at games, and the fact that I feel anything, whether it's like happiness or anger, is a testament to how powerful this game is and that it's doing something. I don't think it's perfect, but I don't think anything, even
I don't think anything's perfect.
Exactly.
Yeah, and exactly. I mean, obviously, I do believe the game is a masterpiece, and it's a well thought out, well said story, and the game is great. The gameplay is great. It's obviously shows level of polish. It's not Naughty Dog's most polished game, and I'll tell you that. I mean, I think that Uncharted is probably a better overall, but it's more of a happy story too. Where it's more of the action-y story that people want.
Uncharted 4.
Yeah, I believe so. I think Uncharted 4 is more polished of a game, but I get what they're doing here, and I love the world. I'm in for more. If they want to do Ellie's story, I'm fine. If they want to do a side story, I'm fine with that. I mean, I would love this almost get like the Uncharted, like Lost Legacy kind of like deal where maybe we have a side story that's a standalone DLC type thing.
Vern had a interesting idea for the next one. Would be like Abby and Ellie, or Abby and Lev, like reach the Fireflies and they find like a new scientist that can like make the cure, and then you spend the time trying to find Ellie and bring her over,
like convince her maybe, or force her, depending on what you want, what happened.
Right.
And that would be interesting. Maybe that would bring it like full circle.
Exactly.
Where it's kind of tropey in a way, but it would be a great story. And I also think the one story you never really hear is about Ellie's mom, and it would be interesting to like flesh that story out a little bit more, and then get into that with and then Abby and Lev. I'd like to see more of them. I'd like to play more of them. I think
you're right. You can do anything. You could go Joel. And
that's
Tommy,
the nice thing about this. Yeah. It's the nice thing about episode 2 is it just opens the world up even more.
Yeah. And I think we're going to see a lot, not right away, obviously, but we're going to start seeing a lot of talk around what's going to happen. I think it's selling too well, I think, and it's just too much. It's too important to Naughty Dog to just let it go.
But the
I'm
thing
ready for
is,
that Factions multiplayer, though.
Right. Sure. The thing is, though, is like the amount of backlash that this game has received, like they're getting death threats,
and that's uncalled for. If you're one of those people, I want to put this out there too. If you're one of those people that's doing that, like tweeting, the people the actors in the game that didn't write it, or even the writers, it's like you're telling them you're going to go kill them and stuff. I mean, what the hell is wrong with you?
Yeah.
I mean, I get it that like you were invested maybe in Joel as a character, but
you can't be that invested and have it be bad though.
I mean, the way that these people are feeling is probably good. The problem is that they're lashing out in the wrong way.
It's insane. Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah.
Like, take comfort in knowing that the story's so good that you feel that way, that you feel upset. Yeah. Like,
maybe take a moment if you're writing death threats to fictional characters to maybe reflect. I mean,
like why? Like, why are you doing that?
You might need help.
Something worse is going on in your life.
For sure.
Right.
For sure.
Right. Because at the end, these are video games, and they're a window of supposed to be reflection and stuff like that. Entertainment and art, entertainment, reflect upon what your experiences are, but don't take that step into the real world with it, where it's like crazy. Where it's getting that bad. Because I mean, that's crazy. Don't do that. Don't do that, please. Especially younger people. Don't do that. That's not cool. You're gonna get in trouble. You're gonna have a record before you're even old enough to know what that means. You know?
Yeah. Plus, you don't want to be that person. You know what I mean?
No, like, you don't want to be.
You're gonna get back what you put out into the world. So put out some positivity.
And I always say, like, look, I will never tell anybody online something that I wouldn't tell to their face. I won't type
that. Would change the world.
Yeah, and I did that would change the. And I have been guilty of not doing that sometimes. And when one time when I got angry at, it wasn't at like a game or anything, but I got angry at somebody online, and you know how people are online. So I got angry and I started having an argument back and forth, and I'm like, why am I doing this? It's not changing anything.
Yeah.
So.
I think Vern froze out.
I think we lost Vern, but that's okay, because I just wanted to thank Vern for joining us and Dylan. And I think we're going to leave it there. Like, if you guys, we're going to put this up on YouTube. We're going to put it on our normal feeds for World 1-1, but we'll see what we get for feedback. If we get a lot of feedback, maybe we'll poll and do some other conversations on some tidbits or whatever you want to think. What do you think, Dylan?
I'm game. Like I had said, end of the day, I think Last of Us is a really, really great game.
Recommend.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend it. And if you're on the fence because you've had it spoiled, as somebody that's had it spoiled, you owe it to yourself, if you're a fan of the first game, to just say fuck it and play it anyway. Because...
And if you're still listening to this and you've had it spoiled, that's on you.
yeah, but
play the game.
Play it because you can listen to people talk about it. You can have it spoiled for you, but until you experience it yourself, you don't really know. And once you get there, you'll feel differently, I think. I mean, I did.
And if you don't, and you want to talk about it, reach out. We want to hear from you.
Absolutely.
So, all right, I think we'll just stop it right there, and we'll say see you later.
Yeah, take it easy.
All right.